Good morning to everyone tuning in. Welcome to the morning session at the Games London Summer Business Hub. I'm Michael French, I'm the head of Games London. I'm just popping in here to say hello ahead of our first panel discussion, introduce some speakers and do a bit of housekeeping. I just want to thank all the delegates who have logged on to this event over the couple of days, today and tomorrow, we can see that there's been a few hundred meetings booked already. There's like 150 companies in the system, and I know it looks like some of you are logging on to watch this now, and I think the numbers will go up as we go through. We did this event. You don't need me to tell you how the world has changed, but we did this event as an alternative to a kind of a physical trade mission we normally run, and the opportunity this time has been that we've managed to make it bigger and more welcoming to studios all over the world, actually. Games London is funded by the Mayor of London, but we are also able to offer this for free thanks to some support from a few companies, Here East, Reddit and Powster, so thanks to them. Feel free to pop any questions into the chat as this goes along and say hello, and then also for our panelists. I mean, onto the panel itself now. To start the event, we wanted to do something that talked about all the new kinds of studio leadership cropping up in around London, and to chair that discussion, there was no one better to ask than Roberta Luca, the CMO and co-founder of Bossa. She's a serial entrepreneur, really passionate about business and how people work. She's done YouTube videos chronicling sort of her experiences, and she's got a podcast launching soon, which she'll tell you about in a minute. She's joined by Tara Reddy from Love Shark, Nahal Tharoor from Electric Noir, and Abubakar Salim from Silver Rain Games, but I'll leave the rest of the talking to them. I'll turn my camera off and switch over to our panelists. Like I say, if you have any questions for the panel, type them into the chat. We'll pick them up for the end, but I'll sign off now. Roberta and team, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so is everything working now? Okay, I can see myself, but I hope that I will be able to see everyone, that everyone is able to see everyone on the panel. So what I'm going to do is, instead of doing introductions to my fellow panelists, I'm going to ask them to talk about themselves, just in case they're not appearing to you right now on the screen. As soon as they start talking, they will appear to you. And I have the immense pleasure, as Michael said, to welcome these amazing entrepreneurs who are starting their new companies in different ways and tackling different audiences. And I'm super passionate about to be here. So we have Tara Reddy, Abubakar Salim, and Nahal Tharoor. Please introduce yourselves, and then we move on to ask some really good questions. Tara, over to you.
All right. So I'm Tara, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of a studio called Love Shark, with my lovely co-founder Sam. And we make camera games for Gen Z girls. So that's basically games that you play in the mobile phone camera that use technologies like computer vision and augmented reality. It sounds very, very sort of high tech, and I guess it is sort of behind the scenes. But we're really a studio that focuses on, making really cool and novel experiences rather than being super techy.
Amazing. Right. Abu.
Yeah, hi. My name's Abubakar Salim. I run a new studio called Silver Rain Games, where we're looking at sort of, our tagline is creating narratives to empower players. So we're looking at games which are quite narrative driven, but also quite cool mechanically as well. As I said, quite new, just entering this industry, kind of just gung ho really. But the way I kind of started was through acting. I played Bayek in Assassin's Creed Origins, and kind of that gave me insight into like a bit of the studio and of Ubisoft and how that kind of works and all that jazz. And it just, I've always been an avid gamer, so it's always been a dream of mine to start a studio. So yeah, I'm here. I've partnered up with the lovely Mel Phillips, who is head of studio, and she's the one who her job is basically to tell me no to all the crazy ideas that I come with about games. So yeah.
We need those people in our lives, right? Otherwise, we'll never deliver anything. Creatives. Nahal, over to you.
Hi, I'm Nahal, and I'm the CEO of Electric Noir Studios, and we're making an interactive crime drama called Dead Man's Phone, where you are the detective who kind of solves murders through the smartphone of victims. I kind of me and my co-founder Ben come from the kind of creative advertising background. No real plan to get into gaming until about 3 years ago when we had this idea, and we've just kind of followed it. But I think the larger vision of our business is to kind of just, as a kind of new form of interactive storytelling, live action with real actors using the interface of the phone as the vehicle for narrative. So that's what we're doing.
That's incredible. So as you guys can see, we have like a range of different entrepreneurs here who did not come originally from the games industry. Well, of course, Abu has been working with Assassin's Creed before, but of course he's been an actor, and Tara was a vet, and Nahal was working with advertising agencies. So my first question is, what motivated each of you to start a games company? Who wants to go first?
So I could say for us, you know, we just got hired at this agency in London, me and Ben, no intention of going into gaming, but it was really just the idea. I think we were in our office and an email chain came round about a soap opera taking place in South Africa on a WhatsApp conversation. And we just thought that was just quite interesting. We never really thought of using that WhatsApp as a way to tell stories, and really just kind of fully formed the idea of kind of having the phone of a murder victim and being a murder detective, which is just a real experience for many detectives now. Just kind of landed, and we looked it up, and no one had done the idea, so we kind of kept working at it, probably a bit too much during our time, and because we got sacked from our job after we didn't make our probation, and because we were spending all our time on this idea, and then we were just kind of without a job. We thought, you know, why not take a punt on this idea, and that's when we started the company.
That's a great way to start. You have like deep motivation to make something amazing. That's cool. Tara, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So Sam and I, my co-founder, we were working in a company called Blipper, which was, you know, one of the sort of like biggest and one of the leaders in augmented reality. And we've been shipping like augmented reality social networks, advertising campaigns, even some little games, you know, for quite a few years. And we just thought that, like, you know, camera games was going to be this amazing thing. And Apple released their ARKit technology so that any developer in the world could build AR content. And we were like, this is going to be the time. There's going to be amazing stuff coming out. And we were just watching the App Store and waiting to see what would come out. And there just wasn't that much. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that was coming out was sort of, it felt a little bit more like a tech demo than like really sort of like meaningful experiences. So we kind of got to a point where we were like, oh, this is a massive opportunity and no one's doing it. Maybe we'll just have a go. So, you know, we started prototyping in our spare time, and we came up with this concept of, you know, camera games being that bridge between social media and games, you know, where you can play games in the camera on your mobile phone, but you can also create video content that you can share. And we thought, oh my God, this is like the most like amazing idea ever. And we actually have quite a lot of good experience. Like, let's do this. So we essentially quit our jobs, and we shipped our first game within 5 weeks. And then that game got featured by Apple. So it sort of gave us a little bit of a boost. It sort of gave us a bit of validation and showed the world that, oh, we could actually, you know, build some fairly nice stuff. And then I guess that was the sort of initial push that got us going. And then just now, 2 years later, we're still here.
That's amazing. What is the importance for you to have such an early validation from the market, to say from Apple featuring, or, you know, to have validation from the market?
I think it was especially important for us because we'd not come from games. And we went quite gung ho. We were talking to early stage investors, and everyone just kept saying to us like, oh, "You don't know games. Like it's not just a sort of industry that you can just step into and make a hit." So that, I guess we did internalize that a bit, and we thought, well, let's try and see how it goes. And I think getting that early validation, it sort of showed us like, oh, like what we made this time wasn't perfect, but it's enough that we're getting recognition for it. And I think that also helped to convince the first investors and some people in the game industry that, oh, maybe we were worth giving a bit of time to. So yeah, I guess it proved it to us, but it also proved it to others. And that's how we got our first little bit of investment. And then the first thing we did was hire 2 people from the game industry, because we knew we needed, some of that knowledge and talent to come into the team. So yeah, it was just a bit of a boost, to be honest.
That's such an important move. Abu, from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I'm again, as I said, like I'm coming from a background mainly, like I played a lot of games, and but I'm a film and TV actor, so I come from a space where the film and TV industry have no idea about games, don't even really acknowledge games, they don't really know what to do with it. But for me, a lot of my inspiration and actually how I got into acting was through games, through the storytelling, through games. So that to me, the kind of the place where it came from was mainly from just the power of storytelling through an interactive medium. Because again, I think there is something quite it inspired me to do, to tell stories myself, to write, to to the crazy sort of worlds that it brings there. But at the same time, I think it has such an influence in regards to changing people's minds and points of view, and people are so passionate about video games to the point where like Twitter can literally explode. So it's for me there's something there, and I quite like the idea of trying to harness some bit of that power, in the sense of trying to you know tell a good story and move people and get people to think. So that's kind of where it started. And yeah, again, the founding of the studio kind of comes from also the intention of getting people, like my friends in the film industry, to play games, to see the power and potential of it as well. So so yeah, it's that's sort of where it's stemmed from, really.
So when you talk about the desire to change something, right, and kind of this appreciation for storytelling, is it about making a dent in the world of entertainment, or it's about making a game that no one has ever played, because there's so many storytelling kind of thinking behind that when you're creating the narrative?
I think it's a bit of both, I think there is a sense of like, I think um stories have power. I think in the sense of like, they can inspire people to either, do great things, or to, to be a bit wild. But the thing is, I think that it's not only to kind of give the entertainment medium a different shift in the sense of how stories can be told and how it can be digested, but I also think that there is a sense of empowering, uh, kids or people who haven't necessarily seen themselves being depicted on on media, and giving them that kind of inspiration of being like, yo, I could be that. Because I think, like, for me, for example, like I didn't get into acting through my love of TV and film, because I didn't see anyone who looked like me, and but whereas when I played games, even though no one looked like me, I was still actively taking part in a story, which inspired me to then want to tell my own stories. So that was my way in. So I feel like there is something really cool there, because it's like, and I'm not saying we got to make stories which are going to empower everyone. I mean it. I mean it in the sense of like, I feel that there is a potential there of of really opening people's minds in regards to narrative, giving them, looking them getting a look into a world in which they wouldn't necessarily have you know, thought of, or you know, which is very different to the way in which TV does, because in TV it's a very passive thing. You know, you're sitting on the sofa, you're with a loved one or just by yourself, and you're watching, you know, you're watching a show that you enjoy passively to pass time, you know, to kind of, you know, to kind of be enwrapped in it. But then, you know, you wake up tomorrow and you forget about it. Whereas, you know, you play games like The Last of Us, and Twitter's still mad about it. So it's like it's that whole, you know, there's a power in that. And I think that for me, it's because of the amount of time that you put into it, and because you're actively a part of this story. So yeah, it's a bit of both.
That's super interesting. Yeah, it's and you cannot be what you don't see, right? And if you are majoring that, and other people are seeing those different stories, they will, you're gonna be inspiring a different audience. And so going back to Nahal, do you think that are you specifically targeting a different audience within the games world? And that's going to be a question to all of you as well, because I know that you have different angles for different audiences that probably are a little bit untapped right now in terms of the games that are available. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the audiences that you guys are looking for.
Yeah, really. I mean, our vision with what we're doing is to kind of be able to shake away the word game. And I think there's a obvious, almost a poverty of language at the moment, but we see what we're doing as kind of interactive storytelling. And coming to Abu's background, that's really where, you know, we're trying to bridge those worlds of film, television, and gaming, and create that kind of experience. I think what's interesting, we've seen with the Dead Man's Phone beta, there's that most of our audience don't even consider themselves gamers. We have a little questionnaire at the end, and about 70% of them say that they're kind of crime lovers first, because, you know, they watch Netflix crime dramas, they listen to murder mystery podcasts, and this is just an extension of their kind of love of those kind of narratives. And they wouldn't be the kind of people really who would be playing, you know, mobile games normally. And that's really where we see our business going, kind of bringing in people from outside, you know, making interactive stories, you know, as a kind of narrative art form alongside cinema and television, and kind of bringing audiences towards that, and kind of creating these accidental gamers, almost people who right now would say, oh, I would never play a mobile game, but who start to engage with with the narrative form that we're developing, and find actually this is something they can get behind.
Super interesting. Tara, you're also opening up to a completely different audience, right? Which is probably a little bit more related to the social networking. That's the type of thing that LoveShark has been doing.
Yeah, so our audience is Gen Z girls, most specifically focusing on sort of like late teenage girls. And there's a number of reasons that we're building for these guys. I think there's like a personal thing for me is that I've always gamed since I was 4 years old. And I really did feel that, you know, when I would go to the game store when I was a kid, that there was sort of like the Barbie pink section, and then the massive fighting cars sort of like violent game section that just did not interest me. And the section for me was like quite small. It felt very limited. So that's always been a bit of a driver for me, that like, you know, especially these days, if you look at, you know, Gen Z, like 84% of teenage girls are gaming, or they're playing games of some sort. They may not call themselves a gamer, but they're playing games. And there's actually very few pieces of content that are made specifically for them. And I think if you look at, you know, what happens when you make games that teenage girls love, like look at The Sims. That's like a $5 billion sort of game franchise. And then more recently, you know, games like Choices and Episodes have done super well. So we know the appetite's there. But what I've sort of noticed is that often there can be a bit of a tendency to get a little stereotypy when you start making games for this audience. So, you know, we've seen a lot of games around dating and getting the guy and having the best outfit. And, you know, maybe that's fun sometimes, but these you know, these people are broader than that. They have broader interests, and I think it makes sense to build things that are a little less generic for them. So our approach is basically to sort of reimagine. We reimagine games. We reimagine, how do teenage girls actually like to play in games, but also offline. What are the behavioral sides of that? What are the needs of that? How do they like to socialize? Like looking at behaviors on social media and in real life, and then trying to reimagine how would a game community look for them if it was built, forgetting everything that's done before. So yeah, I guess we've tried to take the best lessons from games, from social media, and from real life behaviors, and then build that up into something new. That people might say it's a game, people might say it's a social platform. We don't really care as long as we're providing sort of fun, authentic types of entertainment that feels like it's made for them and that they love. Then that's a massive win.
Cool. Full disclosure, I'm an angel investor in Tara's company, so I'm a big fan. I have to say that because, I might ask some questions here because I just know her. I know the company a lot. Abu, anything from an audience perspective you would want to share? Who are the people who will be playing your game?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the way that I approach it is like I'm like, you know what, I just want my mom to play my games. She has
Nice.
no idea about games. So, if I get her playing it, I'm kind of like, cool, that's great. So
You
that's
made
the
it.
sort of, yeah, right. You know what I mean? So I think that's the kind of, that's the sort of broad spectrum of it. But it is just it's people, we're looking at players who are first time players and wanting to kind of get into it, and also, players who are seasoned as well, who enjoy the challenge aspect of it. So it is quite broad. It is quite, it's quite out there. But ultimately, I think I think, the players really are like the the little versions of me. When I was a kid, those kind of, guys who love to, or girls who love to kind of escape. And I think that's the sort, and into these kind of crazy worlds and these cool worlds, and those are the sort of players I'm going for. Again, and as I say, like I'm trying to I'm trying to look at the power of storytelling and sort of look at anyone who wants a good story. This is a game for them. That's sort of where we're going.
So let's change gears a little bit and kind of talk about the business aspect of everything that you guys have been doing, right? So we are in this world where we're fighting for attention. So everyone is consuming tons of content daily from our App Store, Steam, Epic, Netflix, YouTube, TikTok, Spotify, you name it, right? And we all know that sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, making a game or making a new product is not enough to reach a super wide audience. And of course, you guys as a business, right, you're making a business out of that and raising investments and etc. You have to be able to go to the market and you have to be able to make money out of the game that you're creating. So how do you plan to market your games? And if you're already doing it, what are the struggles or things that you learned that it was a big discovery for you that you're like, wow, if I knew that in the beginning, I would have started slightly different? Anyone wants to pick up?
I mean, I feel like I'm just starting. So the idea of, when starting building the game, and I think the way in which we're sort of trying to stand out is more, I don't know, actually. It's funny because you're right. There is a lot of content out there, and there's so much. It's almost like why should the audience or people or players take the gamble on you in a way? And I think there is that one way of looking at it personally, but I mean, yeah, call me a dreamer, but I'm more of the mentality of like, if you create something that's really exciting and different. And when I say that, I mean like, be it like a really cool mechanic, or or something, again, just out of a bit out of the ordinary. I think that will sort of make you stand out naturally. I think there's also this, we are also in a time where there is just so much content, but people, and people do have quite a lot of time. I mean, like, look, we were in lockdown not long ago, and I remember the the film and TV industry literally panicking because people were consuming content at such a rate that it was like they had no way of producing enough content. So I feel like there's always going to be a space in the market or a gap in the market for your story or for your game or for your for what you want to do. That's from my experience anyway. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure everyone else knows, yeah.
Yeah, picking on Abu's point, we kind of had I guess we found been quite lucky in terms of marketing. We just had our app. It's still in beta, but it's been on the Google Play Store for the last year. And I think obviously it helps that the product itself it kind of stands out because it's all with real actors. So we've had about 100,000 organic traffic in the last year, which has been really great. And the Google Play kind of algorithm pushes you up, and it's more discoverable. So we've been kind of quite lucky on that front. But I think when it actually comes to properly launching, I think we've done a bit of Facebook advertising. I think that's essential, these days. And Facebook can find, your ideal audience. They can learn from it, the super algorithm in it. And I think, like I was saying earlier, for our experience, I think it's a lot easier to target people rather than trying to get a mobile gamer to stop playing their mobile game and come to yours, which is harder to acquire for us, at least. We're going to be looking to kind of create those accidental gamers and target people who are not really that into mobile gaming yet, because I think we'll find that, or we have found that the UA costs are, a little bit better on that front.
I love that approach. That's cool. Yeah, I can speak from mobile. I haven't, marketed games not on mobile, but I mean, personally, my thought is that the App Store is massively crowded. There's so much content, so much games on there. So I think, especially if you're a startup with a pretty small marketing budget, you have to think about some sort of hack to get noticed. Now, whether that, there's multiple different ways to do that. Some people get celebrity influencers to do a post about them, and the games have exploded. That's happened to quite a few game studios. Maybe it's something to do with virality in your game. So having something in there that is a really compelling reason to share with others. Multiplayer is obviously good because you're inviting another person. Our approach has been or will be in the game that we're about to release, is really to leverage social media massively. So because we make camera games, they create video, and short shareable video is a massive viral growth vector. So TikTok, Dubsmash, Vine, so many of these viral apps went big because people shared viral video. So that's a massive part of not only our marketing strategy but our product strategy. When we make games, we think about, will this game make content that's good enough to share? Because that's going to be our free marketing strategy. That's one side. And then the other is, because we're marketing to Gen Z, these guys are they're so savvy. They've been on the internet since they were born. They spot inauthenticity a mile off. So, just paying influencers to just post about us isn't really going to be enough. We think they're going to see through it. So we actually are working with creators and influencers online, but doing it in a little bit more of an organic way where they're sort of natively incorporated into the game, so that when they do post on their socials about it, there's a really important reason for their audience to come into our game, because they get to interact more deeply with the person that they're following, someone that they admire, or that influences them on socials. So yeah, we've put a lot of thought into that side. And then I guess the last sort of point that I think is super important is people do care about who's behind the product these days. You know, I think in the old days you could be a sort of faceless corporation, but the market's changing. Consumers they want to favor products that are coming from good leaders and good brands. So I think a sort of third aspect is to consider your personal brand and your values, and authentically inject them into your product and live those values day to day, and then, you know, do PR around it. So it starts to create, I guess, well, it takes the essence and the personality of your game, brings it to life, and that really resonates with millennials and Gen Z. So yeah, we think about marketing on a lot of different levels.
I love that. It's like across the board, like make a game that stand out from the crowd, right? So make sure you create a great product. Make sure that you also talk to the platform holders, right? So otherwise you're not going to be seen, because, you know, Google and Apple can actually help you on featuring your game. And of course, like hacks and network effects, and make a product that actually can engage meaningfully with people and influencers, and creates, as it's called in the market, in the startup world, network effect, which is essentially elements in the gameplay that will make your game go viral, just by the people sharing, high shareability, right? Which are fantastic things, and the behind the scenes. And I think you three have been showing that you have such a strong point of view and desire to create different games, that I think you definitely, the three of you, have an amazing potential to play more on the personal branding side and show the behind the scenes of your ethos. I love that, and I hope everyone is kind of taking notes, because I am taking notes myself. So let's talk about money, because, you know, I as an entrepreneur, like for 10 years, I have a lot of requests all the time. People asking, how did you raise money? How did you pitch to investors? Who here has been or have raised money? And tell us a little bit about your experience, either challenges or good things or big advice on pitch decks, and how do you pitch to investors? How do you find investors?
For us, yeah, I mean, we raised a very a small kind of family and friends round, which is quite typical when you start out, because you have nothing to show. You just have a kind of PowerPoint presentation and a big idea. And I think when we started out, we thought, you know, we could kind of go to kind of serious investors, venture capitalists, and serious angel investors and get backing. But we very quickly realized that, I think on two fronts. Firstly, that, you know, we were very early, but also the product we were making wasn't really, it was so new to the market in terms of kind of live action mobile storytelling, that there was very, very little reference points. So it was very hard for people to kind of see or know that this is going to be successful. And so I think it was a little bit harder for us starting out. So, you know, we really did need people, as I say, family and friends, to take a punt on us. And we raised that kind of first round a few years ago. And then we've just closed our first venture capital round with some angel investors a couple of months ago. And that for us was also a long journey. But by that point, we had a product, and we had some really exciting data. And also the market for what we're doing had grown, and there was a bit more touch points for the investors to see the potential in that. But I guess, but just bringing it down to kind of a simple thing, I think, you know, warm introductions, I think, is one of the most important parts of your kind of fundraising journey. No, you'll get nowhere with cold emails, and we used to do that very early on. You need to find and find, you know, reputable people in the industry who are interested in what you're doing, and that you can kind of get behind your vision. And then once they're on board, it's just about, you know, asking them, you know, is there anyone in your network who you think might be interested too, and get them to kind of send an email and introduce you. and it's just through, for us at least, it's kind of this chain of and web of warm introductions, which lead to more conversations, which lead to more, and then 1% of them will turn into something with a lot of potential. But it is that kind of long slog and numbers game. But if you kind of have that clear vision of what you're doing, I think
how many,
if
you would kind of guess about the percentage ratio of yes versus no's. So did you have to kill any frogs?
Well, what's interesting is you get a lot of yeses. You get a lot of yeses that then just peter out. So I think we had about maybe a dozen times where we're like, oh my God, we've done it, and then it just, you send an email and it goes a bit cold, or it doesn't really work out. So it takes a lot. It takes a lot, and you have to keep at it. But yeah, I mean, I'd say about 5% will have some serious potential.
Yeah, I have a few bits and pieces to add there. Yeah, we definitely found at the start, like, most people just thought we were a bit nuts, not being from games. They're like, why is a vet and an astrophysicist starting a games company? But yeah, and I think our rate of yeses at the start was about 5%, which feels pretty tough. But I think the more you do it, and the more warm introductions you get, and the more you start to be known and people start to trust you in the industry, it goes up a lot. So I'd say in the last funding round we got to probably nearly like 50% yeses, but it started at 5, so it took years to get there. But I think it does get better. And then I think one thing that's super important that often gets forgotten is, like, get help, especially at the start when you're nobody and nobody knows who cares about you. Like, I have to big up Games London, because they were the people that invited me to my first game event, VIP, and sat me down next to some really, like, smart people from the game industry, and just, like, got me out there, got networking. They sort of stood behind us and validated that we were something, and then other people started to respect us a bit. And then we did a sponsored trip to Slush with Games London as well, which meant we met a lot more sort of investors and people in games. We had the UK Games Fund. They did a grant. They actually did 2 grants for us last year. And Innovate UK, again, they actually did a grant for us last year. So, even at the start, when investors are saying no, there's other people.
Yeah. Can I just also add to this that talking to co-founders is essential, and for us personally, Tara was totally instrumental in our business, because I think Tara was a bit, ahead of us in terms of where she was and in terms of investment. And me and my co-founder, Ben, were a bit lost without any idea. And we went to talk to her a year ago, and she introduced us to one of her angel investors, which basically started a chain reaction, which just totally changed our business.
My God.
Thank you for that, Tara. And I feel like I have to acknowledge that here. And so I think, yeah, absolutely, like, everything what Tara is saying, and then also co-founders, because other founders, because they're really going through exactly what you've gone through. And if you can find someone who's maybe a little bit ahead of you, they can just show you the way a little bit more, and can show you the pitfalls and give you that.
I need to
guidance.
Continue the chain, because Roberta did that for me at the start as well.
We're creating a positive chain here.
I know, it's good. So yeah,
I love
one
that.
of the first people to believe. That's amazing when someone that's really done something in the industry and that's respected, when they say, yeah, I believe in you, that's a massive win. So yeah, such a positive convo, eh?
Oh, I'm gonna cry. But everyone who's listening and watching us is like, this is such a pearl of wisdom, and very few times I've seen people talking about that. leverage your connections, talk to other founders, because we all kind of empathize with the journey, and very often, if we don't have money to invest, we will point you into the right direction.
Mm. Yeah, I think for me it's been, and we are at that phase where we are actually beginning to pitch our idea and look for money. Initially, again, it was, I think the way that we kind of, our journey, mine and Mel's journey, has been of the mentality of like we knew the game industry. We hadn't made a game, we hadn't had anything under our belt, but we knew it, and we we talked to people. We just kept talking to other founders, other people who had who were in the industry trying to make their game, and learnt from them, and learnt different publishers and different investors, the different way the business works, and we've just gone at it because I think and ultimately, yeah, of course, like I mean, we're approaching it with a lot of passion behind us, but we also, we're approaching it with a lot of kind of business savvy as well, and knowing that, it is, at the end of the day, it is a business, and you've got to know the difference, between angel investors, venture capitalists, and or like a publisher. So I feel like it's, the way that I've started this is that I've, I saved quite a bit of money from my acting work, and I've just kind of poured it into the business, as a sort of a one, because I believed in it, and two, because I thought, what, we might as well get the ball rolling. But at the same time, it's like, because I kind of knew that there are going to be people out there who are like, but you've never made a game before, and kind of not really take us seriously. But at the same time, it's like, okay, cool, well, let's just start making stuff and learning stuff, and getting that out there to kind of go to people like, look, we're not screwing about, we know what we're doing. So yeah, it's I think, and again, I'm in this weird position as well, because I come with quite a lot of connections within the film industry, and also with the work that I've done in the film industry, which kind of helps put, it's interesting, because I guess investors look at that and say, oh wow, it's the guy who played Bayek, or the guy who worked with Ridley Scott. Like that adds a level of like getting my foot in the door. But still, it's it's still quite hard, in the sense of like being, again, coming from a position of where people are like, but you've never made a game before. But yeah, it is. But I think that the support of the game industry itself has been phenomenal. The fact that we're here talking so openly about this. I don't think I've been in a a TV or film, or in a Hollywood talk, where it has been this open about pitching. So it's like, it's really it's yeah, it's quite a fascinating beast, really.
So definitely offline with Tara, and how afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Great conversations to have. Anyone pitching during lockdown? So any advice or learnings to share with the audience? If there's anyone in the audience trying to pitch to an investor right now, when we're seeing each other through a screen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pitching right now, so the best advice I'd say is pitch your idea to someone who has no idea what you're talking about, and and to them, you'll get honest feedback, number one, but two, you'll know whether your pitch is clear or not, because I think that's what needs to be. It needs to be clear, and that's sort of, I've pitched to to friends and family, and rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, just to make sure it's it's good. And also, I've got my agents as well, who have no idea about the games industry, and pitching to them to get their feedback on it as well. So it's like, it's just rehearsing, I think, and making sure it's clear.
Yeah, I found one. Oh, sorry. I knew that was going to happen at some point.
No, go ahead.
We've been pitching as well. I found that practicing. Well, actually, yeah. So doing those practice pitches has definitely been helpful. But also, like, finding what are the golden nuggets in your pitch, because there are certain lines that you say that every time you say them, the person you're pitching to, like, they either are like, oh, I get it, or they're like, I love that. You know, there's these sort of lines over and over that you need to sort of identify. And I think when you're the founder and you're too close to it, you don't really know what's the magic from what's like the normal sort of like filler stuff in the pitch. So what I've done for other founders and what they've done for me is just like, do the pitch and then just get them to note down which were the bits that like were really impactful. And then I actually went back and tried to front load a lot of them into the first part of the pitch, so that, it just sets you off on a really good sort of trajectory. Your investor hears like 5 amazing things in the first sort of 30 seconds. And I think, from a psychological perspective, you're starting to win them over really fast, and it sort of has that halo effect on the rest of the pitch. So yeah, that's definitely my little piece of advice.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's kind of like a stand-up routine that you kind of hone, and you can see the audience responding to the best jokes. But yeah, I mean, it's during COVID. I mean, we closed our investment round in May, and it was all kind of March and April where we were trying to make it happen. So it was very much all in lockdown. I think I guess you're not going to be, if you're in person, you can really do that. Put your deck up on the screen and really talk, kind of go through the deck, which has its own benefits. I think for us at least, you would just, they might look at the deck and then you would just jump on a call, but you wouldn't really go through a deck on Zoom. But other than that, I mean, I think there's, with all these things now, it can happen, and it's not. There's no major obstacles, even in lockdown times, to pitching and fundraising. I think it's just being able to have these conversations and doing it on Zoom. You can still establish a rapport with
no
people.
deck on Zoom. Make sure
yeah.
you have the 5 first things that engage people immediately, and pitch to as many people as you can who probably don't have a clue about your business. Really, really good advice. Let's change gears slightly a bit again and talk about your culture, your company culture that you have been developing, right? So have you seen a massive impact that has COVID affected your day-to-day and your hiring and the structure that you have been building for the company and the culture you want to create?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, honestly, go for it.
I feel like, yeah, I mean, to a degree. I mean, like we're a remote studio, so we're working with people all over the world. And so I think ultimately we've been quite busy, but at the same time it's definitely affected some of the team members sort of, and even me as well, the mental state, I think, because you're working from home, so you got to find a way of shutting that off, and the idea of being like, okay, right, I'll do work, and then I'm gonna be at home rather than working till the stupid late hours. So that's kind of how it's affected a bit. And also, the idea of not being able to really connect with people physically. We're only talking to people over Zoom. You have this relationship with Zoom. But yeah, I think in regards to sort of the way in which we have been operating, because again we are remote based, it's not been that hard in the sense. Not much has been different. There's a lot of emailing to people. There's a lot of people emailing us, and and talking in that kind of back and forth. But mentally, I think it has definitely affected, because it feels, again, you're not connecting. It's not normal times, right?
Yeah. I see what you mean. I feel a lot of, I'm a people person, so I need that kind of connection that the screen doesn't share. And and at Bossa, we had to change quite a bit the way that we engage with the team, so that we feel that we are connected to each individual, even if we're now like close to 100 people. So it's complex. Go ahead, Tara.
Yeah, I mean, I think because what we're doing is there's often a lot of prototyping, and we're testing a lot of new things all the time. We find it quite challenging because it's really hard to have those sort of like those like brainstorms and those like sort of serendipity fueled sort of conversations, over Zoom. So from that side, like I think we definitely miss that. I think on the other side, the team really impressed me with just how they were already like pretty autonomous and independent people, but I think a lot of them just sort of seized it and ran with it. And because they knew it was that little bit harder to ask for permission on things, most of them just forged on and did what they thought and made decisions. And that actually showed me that, God, these guys really, like, they know what we're doing, they know the strategy, they know who our audience are, and they're making really good decisions because of that. So it was actually like almost a time for me to reflect a little bit as well on, okay, like I can actually, I can probably step out of some of the micro conversations a bit more now and let the guys get on with it. As long as we still have those sort of like we do a show and tell every 2 weeks where the whole team gets together and shows something that they've been working on, and just having those little sort of like, I guess, more formal times for cross-pollination and for people to look over someone else's screen, which you miss in the office. And yeah, it's almost been an opportunity for us to explore a new way of working that I think a lot of the team quite like. So some positives as well.
Yeah, but add to that. Yeah, I mean, we've been a remote working studio since we started, but there's no doubt, coming together. Just in the kind of day-to-day work, we all kind of know what we're doing, but there's kind of like macro problem solving. When you get just everyone in a room together, the things just come out of it in a much more kind of fluid and organic way, which it is difficult to replicate on Zoom. But I mean, we actually just got put an offer down on a workspace for September, because we're bringing on a few more people, and I think we'll have to kind of really trial it and see what works. I don't think it's going to be a full-time office situation, but I do think it's important to have a base to bring people together, especially in these kind of early days. I mean, there'll be about 6 of us, and we're bringing on some new writers. And the way I imagine it working, it would be quite flexible. But just having that place to kind of bring together and to hash out the ideas, I think, is still really valuable.
So when you talk about serendipity and kind of the level of trust and how teams are working, that kind of mental state and etc., are there specific tools apart from Zoom, of course, that you started to use that it would be a great resource for people who are watching us to have a go? No new tools.
There's one for us called Jira that we've just got on, which is a project management tool, which our CTO Sam has really kind of taken the lead on. It's pretty. I think it takes a while to get your head around, and we're still getting our head around it. But it really, I think, particularly with the kind of remote working teams, you can really see what everyone's doing, really visibly, and kind of really get an understanding of how that also translates to, your timelines. And, that's often the thing, but, we found is kind of, it's just so hard to predict how long, the parts of the project are going to take. And yeah, it's just been quite a useful tool for us to just have that all mapped out. And yeah, but I mean, it's only as good as what you put into it. And we're all kind of really trying to really kind of commit to that, so we can, just just see how it's all working.
How do you see the kind of the comeback, right, to the new normal? Do you feel that we're gonna go back to having, you know, London as a hub and London as, you know, the community of gamers in London with such a prominent way that we had in the past? How is it going to change? Are we going to be all gathering at the park and having barbecues to talk about business and to exchange stuff within like maximum six people with masks? How do you see that coming back?
I have no idea.
Oh. I think that it's in a way. I mean, the UK as a whole, there's like obviously many sort of like game hubs. There's lots of places where there's great studios and great games talent. But I do think there's been a lot of pressure for people to be in London. I think this is starting to alleviate some of that pressure and make studios more open to remote working or to hiring people from, you know, a bit further away. I see that as a good thing. I think it's a way to tap into talent that, you know, maybe wasn't getting the chance before. And if you live, say you do live, you know, somewhere, I don't know, remote part of Scotland, you probably just have way more job opportunities now than you did before. So I think that's quite cool in a weird way. I think London will always be a sort of like center point and hub. But I do think this is forcing us to sort of like remove our reliance on geography, which is, I think it's important. So yeah, I think that will be a longer lasting change, because I think a lot of companies have shifted their mindset about remote work now, which is probably great for employees.
It's great for everyone, right? Because you guys can hire from anywhere in the world now, because we have the tools and everyone's getting used to talking to each other via screen and finding the ways to create serendipity.
Yeah.
Good. I have been like trying to find the questions here, and apologies if I'm not asking the questions from the audience, because it's like I'm trying to coordinate everything at the same time. So bear with me.
Hey,
yes.
I have got some. I've made a summary of some here. Do you want me to read them back?
Good. Yes, please.
Okay. I think so. It says we've got like 3.5 minutes left. I don't know if it will give us extra time. So we've actually got about 10 minutes more, because the system adds another 4 minutes or so. So one of the first questions that came through was from Sam Partridge at Stage Studios. He says it's a bit of a downer question, but he says, you're all entering a crowded market and we're heading into uncertain waters. How are you differentiating your studios and ensuring you'll be here for the next 5 to 10 years?
Oof. Wow, that's a big question. I think the way that we're approaching it is we're looking at we're looking at just evolving you evolve with time, right? You can't, I think that's the thing about business. You've got to kind of adapt and work with what's going on. So, with us, we're looking at branching into different media platforms, and not just, creating interactive sort of games, but we're also looking at, film and TV, comic books, the idea of what it means to, whether it be hard comics or digital comics or that kind of thing. We're very fluid in that regard, I think. That's kind of the way we're approaching it. But you don't know, do you? As long as you can plan, and that's something that again I've learned in the film and TV industry, is that you can come with people like George Clooney or Brad Pitt or whatever, and you've got this really stellar film and stellar cast. You don't know whether it's going to work or not, and it's so you've just got to go for it and just believe in your own vision and just go for it. I think that's kind of how we're going about it. I'll see you in 5 years. But
yeah, for us, I think for our space, like narrative games on mobile is actually really growing. It's year on year. It's the category is kind of getting bigger, and particularly, like Abba was saying, in that kind of intersection of film, television, and gaming. As far as we see, this is really the beginning of a whole new space, a whole new industry. And in the 5 to 10 year look, I mean, we're even looking at we think the big content platforms, like Netflix, like Amazon, are going to see that, interactive storytelling is something that they're going to really need to start catering for their audiences, and that it's going to become a much more mainstream and kind of global entertainment, beyond gaming. So that's really where our sights are set, and it's about kind of growing that space in that kind of intersection of industries.
I think being a purposeful company and a mission-led company, I think that does differentiate you, especially if we look at, if you look at the news in the games industry over the past year, it's quite apparent that there's some very prominent studios and companies that are just, they're not really, maybe they're not there to make the world better. And I think that, when you start your company that way and you truly live that in your values day to day, the way you manage the company, the way you create content, the way you market everything, I think that does stand out. And I think the sort of like key, well, for us, the key to sort of longevity is to be humble and to listen. So if you're releasing something and it's not working, like listen to the data, listen to the audience, find out why it's not working and adapt. So yeah, I think purpose and data.
Smashing.
Amazing. Michael, are there more questions that you handpicked?
Well, we've got 3 minutes. We've got 3 minutes left. So
3 minutes left.
Here's the last one. And actually, Roberta, this you might be able to talk about this as well, given you'll have been in this position once at Bossa. And it's from Chris Payload. He says, "What's the best way to present yourself or represent yourself, including at the pitching phase, when you don't have a lot or any games under your belt? So, what if your team doesn't fit into what people position? And how do you kind of sell that self?" It goes back to some of the points we were saying earlier. But Roberta, you guys would have had that issue early on, and these guys have it now, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's I think they're much more prepared to talk about this than me. It's been like 10 years. It was 10 years ago for us. But I think, yeah, I came from the entertainment industry. I worked in television before for many years back in Brazil, and then technology and etc. And I guess the key thing for us was to find certain aspects of differentiation of the game that we were creating and the market that we were tackling, that added some sort of credibility and an edge to what we were doing. And so I'm basically resonating with everything that the guy said before, because you have to find your unique path. It's either from a market perspective, from a product perspective, from a pitching perspective, that would galvanize the right people in the beginning of your journey.
Yeah, I feel like it starts, like being atypical starts off as a problem and it's turned into a strength in a way, in the way that people perceive you. So at the start, people were just like, you guys are nuts. And then now, just last week, I had investors telling us like, founders that come from different backgrounds and transition into games, they're just so much more likely to build something huge. So, like it sort of goes 360 over time. I think Roberta's point is very valid on how you sort of like sell your relevance and what you're doing that's different. For us, we try to focus on the one thing that we knew better than anyone else, and that was AR and how people interact in the camera, how they behave in the camera. So we tried to say, yeah, we're not from games, but we know this part better than anyone else, and that was our approach.
Amazing. Look, we have 1 minute and 26 seconds left. Any final words from anyone? How can people connect with you? How can we help each other? I can continue to talk to you like for another hour here. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I hope everyone at home is enjoying too. How do we find you? What is the best way to follow up if people have burning questions to you?
You can find me at Nahal Thoreau, my name, and on Twitter, and the game that we're developing, Dead Man's Phone. I think it's also at Dead Man's Phone on Twitter. But yeah, I'd love to hear from other founders, and obviously I've been very lucky with, as I was saying, with learning from founders ahead of me. So reach out, and I'm happy to chat more about whatever I've learned along
Tara
the way.
Abu. Oh my God, we have 20 seconds. This is like, I'm a terrible timekeeper, Michael.
Mine is Twitter. I'm putting it in the chat. So there
Cool.
you go. If anyone wants to contribute Twitter.
Good,
It'll let me.
Well, for the last,
Yeah.
just the last 10 seconds, I just
Yeah,
want to say a
that'd be
quick thank
easy,
you
won't
to our three panelists for contributing their thoughts, and Roberta for doing wrangling the conversation. Thanks, everyone.